Hello, everyone. I am Chris Hyams, CEO of Indeed, and welcome to the next episode of Here to Help. At Indeed, our mission is to help people get jobs, and this is what gets us out of bed in the morning and what keeps us going all day. And what powers that mission is our people. Here to Help is a look at how experience, strength, and hope inspires people to want to help others. My guest today is Marquis Parker, Senior Director of Global Product Commercialization here at Indeed. He is also a coach, advisor, mentor, and award-winning career blogger. In 2014, Marquis was named by Diversity MBA magazine as one of its top 2014 100 under 50 diverse executive leaders based on his professional experiences, educational background, and contributions to the community. And Marquis's educational background makes me feel like a slacker. He has an AB in computer science from Princeton University, MBA from the Stanford Graduate School of Business, an MA in education from the Stanford University School of Education, and an MS in management and information technology from the University of Virginia. We're going to hear a lot about that. Marquis, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Oh, no problem, Chris. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
So let's start where we always start these conversations. How are you doing right now?
I'm good. I'm good. Kind of excited about having this opportunity to connect with you like this. And saw an awesome movie, The Woman King, last night. So I'm still kind of buzzed off of that because it was such a great flick. But feeling real good right now.
Fantastic. Well, we got a lot of ground to cover, so let's dive in and let's start by just helping people understand what it is that you do. So you're a Senior Director of Global Product Commercialization here at Indeed. What does that actually entail? What is it that you do to help people get jobs?
Let me find the most direct way to describe it. So I have the privilege of working with a group of folks in a bunch of different areas: strategists, operations, sales specialists, intelligent automation folks, and program management folks that are all about helping us scale and launch and scale products. So part of that is go-to-market and product strategy. Some of that is the feedback loop on products. Some of it is interacting with sales and client success and operational support for products and automation and program management, program work. So a lot of what I do is interact back and forth with all these different teams to find out how I can be helpful. It's my role is just to be that supporter of all the folks across global product commercialization. I'll use GPC from now on because there's a lot of syllables in global product commercialization. But yeah, it's working with a bunch of great people to help Indeed help people.
All right. Well, you've had an amazing journey, life and career, and we're gonna kind of walk through that. But let's go back and maybe do a little origin story work here. So you grew up in a small town in Virginia. Talk a little bit about those early years and the role of your family in your life.
Oh yeah. So super small town. Actually, the way backstory is an even smaller town just above the North Carolina border, and it's a county, Sussex County, Virginia. And that's where my parents are from. And there's a little town there called Yale, Virginia, and that was where my mother's parents were, and that's what I still consider home. I grew up about 45 minutes to an hour northeast of Richmond in a different small rural town, but I mention both because it was a lot of back and forth between there, and I come from a big family. So my mom is number 9 of 10, and I think I have like 25, 30 first cousins, but some of them are older than me, so their kids are technically second cousins, but they grew up with us. So it all blends together. And the central point was my grandmother teaching us all what family meant. We all did a stint where like we lived with grandma. I latch on to that because she was kind of like the engine. She had an 8th grade education, I think, maybe not even 8th grade, but she was all about making sure that her grandkids were successful. And then my mom, she was the only one of her siblings that went on to college immediately after high school. She went to a small HBCU called Virginia State University, and so all those degrees and schools that you talked about a second ago would not have happened if she didn't do that. If she didn't, without Virginia State, I don't have my schools, and that was the foundation. And one of the early things she told me, I was like, look, we don't have a lot of money, but as long as you're willing to work hard, you can have whatever you want. I just happen to believe her. And so over the course of time, like, there were a lot of things. Like I think I told you earlier, I had this big seizure when I was 2. And my mom told me that I was out. I was having the seizure for hours. And afterwards, the doctor said that I was supposed to be mentally challenged. Like I was never going to talk. I was never going to learn all these things. And, the only people who actually didn't believe the doctors were like my mom, my grandma, and one of my aunts. And after several months of silence, all of a sudden my grandma walks into a room and hears this little voice, and I'm reading the newspaper. In the meantime, she said I just stared at Sesame Street. And so it's, when I think about my family, that's like the foundation, sort of the support system that let me know that I could do things that I wanted to do, but also they're the reason. My grandmother passed away in, I want to say 97, and I still spend every day trying to make her proud, right? Trying to make my mom proud. And when I told my mom I was doing this, she was so geeked up. It's the kind of stuff that kids where I'm from don't get a chance to do, and as a result, everything's brand new. And I like to try my best to take my family along for the ride with me on it.
So it's clear from the conversations that we've had that your family and other folks around you all sort of helped shape your ambitions and help you understand, where you might land. And so, so you journeyed from Virginia to the Ivy League. Can you talk about that process, how you got there?
Oh man, it was dumb luck and some miracles. I get intellect had something to do with it, right? But it was something that was never something that was programmed as a path. It really was somewhat random. Like in my town, I didn't really get much coaching on how you pick a good college, right? So I never this is back in the 90s, so we didn't, we're not going to websites. We're getting like catalogs. When you've taken the PSAT, you do well, you get a bunch of school catalogs. And I just remember I'd be looking through the catalogs and just randomly picking schools, thinking like, okay, I'll read this catalog. This looks really good. This looks like a good place. Let me just apply. One of the great things about being a broke kid is that you don't pay for college applications. So there's really no friction to apply. And I actually applied to some pretty good ones, not realizing that they were good. Like Georgetown, because I love watching their basketball team. Emory, the Olympics were going to be in '96, so I'm like, yeah, that'd be the end of my freshman year. I can be there for it. Just really silly stuff in hindsight, but at the time, the logic made sense. And I decided that I was 15 for 15. I was going to go to this small HBCU in North Carolina that gave me a full ride, and I realized, hey, maybe I should apply to an Ivy. Why not? Like, I'm not going to get in anyway. And this one I had to pay for. So I was like, all right, I'm only going to do one. And as I was looking through the catalogs that I had from them, Princeton spoke to me. And I figured that there was no chance that it was happening, but I might as well try. And I remember talking to my 11th grade English teacher about it because I had to get a recommendation. And she actually said, Marquis, you can get in. And her name is Miss Sidner, wonderful lady. And I was like, Miss Sidner, I'm gonna apply. I want to get rejected. Now I'm going ahead to North Carolina. And she was like, no, you can actually get in and do this. And that was kind of like the spark that made me say, maybe there's a shot. And so it, the impossible dream happened. And you went to Princeton too. So, back in the day, they would give you the folder. And then you open it up and there's the letter with the word yes at the top. And I remember the day that I got home from school and like the fat envelope was there. And you open it up and you see the yes. And in my case, I passed out Because like that wasn't supposed to happen, right? Like I was supposed to get turned down. And it was funny. That's when I realized that everything was going to be different. I don't know what that meant, but it was gonna. Yeah, I guess I just kind of realized I was on a whole different trajectory, and it was the dumb luck was just me saying, hey, maybe I'll just apply to one, and the miracle was kind of just thinking, having the audacity to think that I had a shot and actually applying, and but thank goodness it did. Nothing that I have now would have been possible if that hadn't come through.
So you have this vision, and clearly, anyone, no matter where they're sitting, but certainly where you are coming from, this idea of what Princeton might be like, is an abstraction until you get there.
Yes.
And so then you show up, and what did you find out about yourself when you got there? What was that experience like?
Oh man, terrifying. It's you go to a place like that, you got all these hopes, dreams, and all that stuff. And also, for me, it was like I was, one of the top kids in my school. And I very quickly realized that being among the top kids at my, my local public high school in my town did not prepare me to be in classes with the top kids at Phillips Exeter Academy at Andover. It's a lot of different places, and I definitely got in there and was not at the top of the heap. But also there were a couple of other things that were kind of weighing in as I thought about this. So hope it's okay if I divert a little. I will take a couple, let's call it a month and a half back from when I landed. The impossible dream happened. And I just remember that last 3 months of senior year was great because, it was almost like I was doing it for everybody. Like everybody in my school was excited. The students, teachers, and all that. And I remember one of the things that I did when I was growing up, or I should say the last 3 years of high school, I worked at our grocery store that we had there, Circle Supermarket. And bagging groceries, working the register, all these things. And I'm on cloud 9 from like the time I got accepted all the way through. And I remember, getting to graduation, getting the standing ovation, everything's great. And then July of that summer between graduation and getting out there, I remember I was at work. Actually, I remember the date. It was a Saturday, July 15th. I'm there working the cash register. This, older white guy comes up that I'd gotten to know, I thought, over the years, joking back and forth, bagging groceries. Talked to him in line. And I remember him, he said, hey, Marquis, you just graduated high school. And like, yeah. He's like, what are you going to do? It's like, oh, I'm going to Princeton to study computer science. And his response was like, oh, Princeton, like Ivy League Princeton? And the first thing that came to mind is like, well, ain't but one, right? It's like, what other Princeton is there where I could study computer science? And his response, he looked me dead in the eye and said, oh, not only are you a funny spear chucker, but you're a smart one too. Now, some of y'all might not know the term spear chucker. This is like one of those old school racial epithets. Like, I've been called a lot of stuff in my life at that point. I'd never been called that. My grandma had told me stories about that. And I remember hearing that and getting angry. And I just remember my hands being down at my sides and my fist balled up. And in that moment, I thought, I would love to just knock this man out. But if I do, the dream's over. So the only thing that I could think to do was pause, laugh a little bit, and try to act like everything was okay. And he looked at me and said, oh, you must not know what that means. And walked out laughing. Never saw the man again. And so in that moment, I kind of said, like, I have to win. I have to be great because I'm not going to be anybody's spear chucker. So to get back to your question, Chris, I get there on campus, $42 in my pocket. And I'm like, yo, I have to win. I don't exactly know what that means, but it wasn't an option not to. And so, as foreign as this was for me, hell, I didn't even know I now look back, I had a really bad accent. Or not bad, I had a really strong, let's say I had a really strong country accent and had no clue because I'd never talked to anybody that didn't talk like me. And then you get there and you get all the kids from other places being like, why'd you talk like that? And impersonating you. And granted, it's not mean spirited, but it's like that's where you immediately realize you're different. And also it's part of, I paid my way through school, working, 30, 35, 40 hours a week, all 4 years. So it's like the experience was totally different. I was basically a college student and a grown up at the same time. And it was really hard at the time. But now I'm actually glad that I had that experience because it it made me realize it's only up from there, right? And also academically, when you're carrying full course load and you're trying to basically pay your way through school, buying books and train tickets home and all that stuff, anyway, I don't think I might have had one B, maybe two in my life before that first year. And then I remember getting a quiz that had a C. And it was like the worst thing ever. It's like, hold up, man, I'm Marquis. Like, I don't do C's. But I did them very well during that first year. And I'm big on like having something that I can like focus on and run after. And for me, it was like I needed a vowel. My transcript needed a vowel because I had a whole lot of consonants. And that was like the thing that I ran after. Thankfully, the vowel came in an econ class, second semester, sophomore year. And then it's like everything got more straightforward. It was like at that point, I realized, hey, I can actually do this. Whereas for like the majority of my first 2 years, I didn't think I could. And then from there, it's just sort of like you start moving up and to the right, and the confidence and being able to work in that environment kind of builds. But I just realized I gave you a really long answer to a short question, so I apologize. But I figured, I got a lot of story to tell.
Yeah, no, there's no short questions when you're talking about your life, really. No, seriously. I mean, so
Yeah, that's true.
So you had that experience, and clearly academics, were important to you growing up. But then this experience then led to one degree after another. So can you talk about the inspiration and what happened with the University of Virginia and then Stanford and how that took you on the path that led to where you are now?
Yeah, so I knew at some point I would go to grad school, right? And I didn't really know. I didn't know what I would go to grad school in. I just like, okay, I got to get a grad degree at some point, right? And even though I majored in computer science, I knew I wanted to move over towards the business side of things, but I didn't really know how, right? Like my thinking was I'd get out of school, right? I was a software engineer right out of school. So I figured I'd plug away at Java code for a little while, and then I'd just magically somehow jump over to the business side. It doesn't really work like that, as I learned. And so I remember talking to one of my friends, one of my oldest friends, classmate of mine, from Princeton. And I was like, hey, I want to make this move, but I don't know how. Like, I don't know what to do. He's like, oh, why don't you get an MBA? And I was like, what's that? Because I'd never heard of an MBA. This is like 2 years after graduation. And so, I was like, all right, let me hop on the internet. I don't know if you remember web crawler, but I hopped on web crawler and put in MBA. I actually didn't know what it stood for. So I looked in Master of Business Administration. And I was like, okay, I should get one of those. And you start researching some more, and I start finding this thing called management consulting. It's like, all right, I should do that. And hearing about this company called McKinsey as I'm researching, it's like, okay, I should go there too. But what I realized as I started researching the MBA game, like I knew that undergrad grades mattered a lot. And my undergrad grades actually trended upward very well. It's like when you start low, there's nowhere else to go but up. And so like they were okay. But I knew that that they probably weren't going to be good enough for the kind of programs that I was targeting. And so the same friend of mine, my man Tony, he was just like, hey, there's this program at UVA, this MS and IT management that we can do without having to leave our jobs. And it was a 12-month executive format. Every other weekend, we were living in the DC area at the time, so we would drive down to Charlottesville all day. What was it? I think it was all day Friday classes, all day Saturday classes. And then we would just go back and work. And that would be like that every other week for a year. And it was, it sort of gave you the grounding in technology, but a level up from writing code. And at the time, he and I are the two youngest graduates, I think, ever in that program. I think the average age in the program was like 36 or 37 at the time. And we were 24 when we started. So he's 3 months older than me. So I'm the youngest graduate, I think, of that program. But, I was able to go through that program, get my 3.7, and was like, all right, I can apply to business school. And the key thing for me is that education is something that no one can take away. And it was like, when you're kind of building yourself up from scratch, I'm all about using bricks that aren't going to get knocked down. And as long as I keep my right mind, the education's there, and the credentials stick with you. So that was kind of the chase. And then when it came to business school, I applied to a bunch of different schools, but Stanford was the place where I wanted to go. So it's kind of like, hey, I'm going to Stanford, and that's it. And impossible dream happened for the second time, and I actually got in. And then the third grad degree was like, I realized when I got there that there was a joint degree in education. And I have some educational nonprofit aspirations for the future. So I was like, hey, let me see if I can just, apply once I'm a student there. So I was able to add that in. And I was able to do both in the same 2 years without paying anything more. So I'm like, all right, I'm not one to pass up a deal, right? So it's just like, all right, I would take these extra classes to get this extra degree. And that's how it worked. And I actually use a lot of the stuff from all three randomly. With different things that I do now. So, very fortunate turn of events.
So, and I don't know if I have the exact timing right, but I think it was before you ended up going to Stanford that you started working on this blog. And then sort of, and it was pretty early on in the idea of people blogging about business. And you essentially chronicled your experiences all the way through graduate school and beyond. So can you talk about where that came from and the role that it played for you, and then this community that you built up around it?
Yeah. So I didn't know anybody that had gone to business school, and so I'm out here trying to gather information, and it was hard to find what was the good information, the bad information. And it occurred to me as like, well, maybe if there's someone else who doesn't know the way to do this, I can tell my story, so at least they know me. And it was just me kind of chronicling everything from going to the info sessions at the very beginning of the process, researching schools, looking into financial aid and all of that. And my thinking was, I doubt anybody's going to read this, but just in case someone does, I'm going to make the story complete. And as I think back, I wrote about a lot of stuff that I really shouldn't have written about. Like I was, there's stuff in there like me going to admit weekend at Stanford and like partying it up and ending up stumbling back into my host's room and collapsing into his floor. And I would write about stuff like that. I didn't know any better. It's like, it's just real life. But what happened over time is like, once I actually started as a student, I was like, well, I don't know what it's like as a student. Maybe there are other people who don't. So let me just keep on writing about that. And in the process, people started reaching out and asking me, emailing me like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Can I get your advice on this? And it was actually the first time anyone actually sought my opinion on anything or looked for my perspective. And I actually enjoyed helping be a thought partner to folks on this. And after a while, it's just like I just had this following. And that's like when I started, getting submitted for awards and stuff. I don't even know if a lot of those awards exist anymore. But over time, like I would share everything. I would share like when I would get dinged for summer internship opportunities, like because if you're gonna tell, you can't just tell the highs, right? You gotta tell the lows too. or else it's not a complete story. And I'm all about the complete story. But over time, I think that kind of helped me connect with folks. And there was a stretch there, Chris, where like I had my picture on the site on the blog, right? So people would recognize me. Like I'd be in airports and people would like, hug me. And I'm like, who are you, stranger? And they're like, hey, it's Jason. Like, I know tons of Jasons. But it would turn out that it would be like someone that sent me an email that I gave some sort of advice on. And it was crazy. Like, it was just building this connectivity just by helping people. It got me excited. And after business school, I was a consultant for a little while at McKinsey. And they wouldn't let me continue. I wanted to write about what it was like as a management consultant. They were like, nah. I was like, all right, but I like having this joint. I want to kill it. And so I kind of pivoted where I was like, all right, y'all, I can't tell y'all what this is like. Being out here on the road, working with these clients. But so just email me questions. And like, I'll give you my thoughts. It's like, it won't be quick responses because it's not like I got time to sleep. So I'm not going to sit there and use my sleep time to respond to emails. But if you're patient, I will give you perspectives. I'll give you thoughts. And that was, oh man, I think I did that for a good 10, 11 years after, in terms of like people sending me emails and me kind of getting back to them. And there were times where it would be like, someone would send me really complicated stuff and I'd be like, all right, let's just talk. Like it would take me 45 minutes to write this email. It'll take me 15 minutes to talk to you. And I love the direct connection and the back and forth. And it really made me feel good that this scraggly little dude from the country who had never done any of this stuff before could actually be relied upon to actually have some insights on things. Because, when you do stuff for the first time, you bump your head a lot. And like bumping your head kind of sucks. But if I can take the ouch from that and help someone else not do it, I just got, I got some excitement out of it. And it allowed me to stay connected with a ton of folks. So like my network is actually pretty crazy because I tend to stay connected with people over time. And I found that as I moved forward in my career, I kind of did the same sorts of things. And so eventually the blog faded out because I just didn't have time to maintain it anymore. But like the motions that I was going through where I was like able to connect with people and give advice on, it just meant a lot. I stuck with it. It's just something that's very core to me now. I can't imagine not being out here trying to help people in that way.
So, as you've gone on in your career, and I know just from getting to know you, a little bit that your values are a big guiding force for you. So how does that factor into when you made decisions, and you made a decision not too long ago to join Indeed, when you're looking at a company and trying to think about where you want to spend your time and your energy and where you can be of use and to be able to help folks. What are you looking for, and how do you think about aligning your values with an organization?
So for me, there are a lot of things that I look at. I think the three big primary ones. One, are there hard problems? Is there something meaty to work on? Because like anybody can just like punch the clock and just coast. Like I'm not here for that, right? Like I can do more than that. So it's like there has to be something where there's some value that I feel like I can add. At the same time, I want to choose opportunities that give me a path, right? So it's like you have to be able to get in somewhere and know that there is something to work towards, and then something after that, and something after that, and that's something that gets me really excited. And one of the big things that has become much more important to me as I've gotten further in my career is a company's stance on diversity, inclusion, belonging, all of that. That bucket of things, because once upon a time it was all about, hey, let me just go to companies that look good on a resume, and then you go into those companies and it's like, man, it'd be great if some other black folks was here, and so it's like, so I'm like, yo, I need to know that the company is forward thinking on that, doing the right things now, but also trying to figure out what the right things are later. And so those are three big big areas for me.
So on that last issue, I know that that's something that is here at Indeed, it's bigger than just who we are as a company. It's also what is our responsibility as being a marketplace that is actually brokering this relationship between job seekers and employers for hundreds of millions of people. And so part of your work within GPC is helping other companies think about their complex hiring needs and how they can use our products, and in particular in ways to make sure that equity is sort of at the core of the recruiting strategy. So can you talk a little bit about that work for you?
Sure. So I have a team within my org in GPC that focuses on equitable hiring. And so I don't know if I'm allowed to give shout outs, but Nonya, Danny, Dan from the GPC side, Ananth, Matt Boswick, there are a bunch of people across Indeed that are touching this work. And in particular, that equitable hiring team is engaging with both the Indeed Equity team that Ananth runs, product team, and the social impact product team that Matt runs. So there's a lot of go to market strategy in there, a lot of going back and forth on product strategy from go to market perspective, but then also there's reaching out to customers, trying to get the feedback, reaching out to the GPS team, Global Product Solutions team, to get input to make sure that the things that we are doing and building to help companies hire more equitably and ensure that people with barriers can get jobs. Our team is right in the mix working with those two teams. Now myself, my engagement is not as much on the day-to-day of that work. It's sort of dropping in, giving input, engaging with the senior product directors on that, and just trying to make sure that we get alignment and moving forward in a productive direction. But this is just something that I genuinely care about. So shout out to Misty, shout out to Jessica and LaFon and the DIMB team. I do a lot of, and now Lundy as well. I do a lot of interaction with those folks to see how I can help there, because it's important. And in order for Indeed to do it right, I feel like we all have to be involved. And I kind of feel a responsibility because I know what happens when there isn't. Equitable hiring, when you go through bad solutions. And one of my philosophies is that you've got to be who you needed. And it's like there have been many times throughout everything where I needed something. I needed someone to help out in some way to put something in place. And so through this kind of work, I just feel really good about it because I am being the person that 25-year-old me needed. Or I'm working on things that 30-year-old me, 35-year-old me needed to have in place to be able to have a much more balanced playing field than I actually had going through. I hope I answered your question right away. I threw some extra stuff in there, but
Yeah. No, so when you think about your experience and the journey, where you came from, where you are today, there's a lot of ground in there, and clearly, as you said, a lot of it was hard work and raw materials. But you did have a network around you, even though you didn't come from a world where everyone was on this path before. And we talk a lot about the fact that talent is universal, opportunity is not. And so, when you think about your experiences, what can we do, Indeed, as a business, to ensure that more marginalized people on both sides of that talent equation, that they can get the opportunity they need and find each other?
A few things. So one, the easy one is just to be the example. Do the right things with our hiring. A lot of the things that Misty and Jessica's team have kind of helped the company put into place. I think that it's, as we're looking at building product solutions, running programs, etc., having things set up internally so we can say, look, we're doing it right too. So we're not just telling you, company X to do things this way. We're demonstrating it. I think a second thing is building the kind of products that keep equitable hiring top of mind and make it straightforward for companies to actually use those products to think about hiring in the right way. Because I think that what happens, companies tend to check the box, but they don't actually do it right. And it's just like it's all pro forma. I think that Indeed has an opportunity to build the tools, make them available, and guide our customers to use those tools, so that they're actually getting diverse slates and actually driving diversity in their hiring efforts. And then one more that I throw in there is it's all about the job seeker presenting opportunities to folks who have all different types of backgrounds, not just, there's race, there's gender, all these different things, but a lot of the stuff around justice impacted job seekers and the stuff on think Abby's world, like all the folks that have these barriers to finding employment. Let those folks know that Indeed is here to help. Come to us, and we also have customers who are trying to hire folks of all different backgrounds. It's really actively doing things to bring those folks together, and not just talking the talk, right? Like, we have to walk the walk. And there are probably a bunch of other things I know you and your team are thinking about. Those are the first three that are top of mind for me.
One of the things that I know that you're involved in, that you're super passionate about, is the Princeton Prize in Race Relations. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and about the work that you're doing there?
Yeah. So that is an initiative that was founded, I want to say back in '03. I think it was the class of '65. And the idea is to give, to recognize high school students that are doing work in areas of race relations, equity, etc. And for a lot of these students, they're doing the work for the love. They're not doing it for recognition. But there's a lot of this work being done. And so I've been involved, I want to say 11 years now. Like, I spent 8 years as the chair here in Chicago for the Princeton Prize, and now I want to say for the last 3 I've been on the national board. And it's just amazing to see the kind of stuff that 14, 15, 16-year-old kids are doing to try to advance equity in a world that they don't even fully understand yet. And I read these applications and I'm just floored, because this is the kind of stuff that most grown-ups don't even think about trying to touch. And here we have 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders doing it. And then so for the ones that have gone through the rounds here in Chicagoland, I often stay in touch with a lot of them. There's one young lady who just graduated from Princeton in June. She was one of my early winners. Youngest one that we've ever had in this area. She won it as a 9th grader, and she ended up going to Princeton. I think she's starting with a VC firm sometime soon. And I am in touch with her and her family, because you invest the time to see how you can help these folks and provide them with the support, the coaching, the guidance. It just feels good. It makes me feel good about the generation that is 20, 30, 40 years behind us, that they actually care about these things. Because, if you look at things right now, it's kind of hard to find optimism, but I find a lot of optimism in the kids that we touch with the Princeton Prize.
Well, that's a perfect segue to we could continue this conversation all day long, and you and I've had many conversations that have gone on because there's so much to talk about. But in wrapping this up, I always do ask the same question, and so I'm gonna go back to that optimism. And the final question is given everything that is going on in the world right now, and all of the challenges, and especially what we've been through globally in the last 2.5 years, what are some of the things that give you optimism for the future?
First big one is my son. So I've got a first grader who turned 7 on Halloween, and watching him grow up and watching the friends that he's made, it's like you realize that a lot of the stuff that we all see every day as adults, it's kind of learned behavior. Because when kids are small, they just play. And like, my son, his name's Thomas. He's got, male friends, female friends, all different races, backgrounds, socioeconomic class. They just play, and it really, that's what they focus on. And as I think about young people and realize that we have an opportunity to try to raise them up in the right way, to not experience some of the things like I experienced in that grocery store. Um, there is hope that my son's generation will be in a much more supportive, equitable, friendly, collaborative environment than my generation. Like, he's not gonna have to worry about some old idiot calling him a spear chucker, right? Like, and actually, he's not gonna worry about going to college with 42 bucks in his pocket and trying to make it work. Shout out to education. That gives me a ton of hope because he's just happy. He's just happy. He's focused on friendships. I think another thing that gives me a lot of hope is that conversations like this, and I feel like folks didn't talk about these sorts of issues as much, maybe as recently as 5 years ago. But over the last 5 years, you can't help but see it every day on the news, every day when you walk around where you are. And as a result, people are talking about things. Like, hell, I wouldn't have told you, well, actually, not to tell that spirit chucker story a lot, but stories like that would not have been welcome in certain environments. Because it's like, oh, this is a black dude with a chip on his shoulder about something that happened, 20 some odd years ago. But now you can have those discussions and realize you might see someone every day at work. You don't know what that person has experienced. You don't know what that person is experiencing. And so I get a lot of hope because folks seem much more open-minded about learning in those kind of situations and trying to do better tomorrow. It's like you can't change what you did yesterday. You can't change what you did 20, 30 years ago, but you can learn today and get better tomorrow. And I feel like people actually give a damn about getting better tomorrow now. So.
Well, that's a fantastic way to wrap things up. Marquis, thank you
I tried.
so much for just sharing your experience and your thoughts and your journey here. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for everything that you do here at Indeed to help people get jobs. And thanks everyone for listening in.
Cool. Thank you.